All right. So we will discuss about the exam questions and answers later on. I have not yet checked your papers. I hope your exam went well. And when I finish checking, we will have a class on discussing on the all the answers and for the different questions. Okay, for our course. So what we are going to do today is we are going to continue our uh, normal course of action and we'll go on to a new chapter which is on fuels and combustion. So the first part of the chapter is actually very simple. It just gives you an overview of what are the different types of fuel which is used for power plant engineering. So mainly in thermal power plants we use coal, and nowadays also natural gas is used. So we will briefly discuss about the uh, like important aspects of these fuels, and then we will see how to calculate the air fuel ratio for different types of fuels, then how to calculate uh, the energy that is stored in the fuel. Okay, so it is known as calorific value. So the calorific value of the fuel, this we will calculate based on enthalpy of reaction. So how to calculate based on enthalpy of reaction, how to calculate basically the enthalpy of reaction itself based on enthalpy of formation of the different components of a fuel. And then in the final part of this chapter, we are going to see how to calculate the temperature which is generated during combustion process. So what is there is something known as adiabatic flame temperature, which is the maximum temperature that can be achieved. And depending on how much air is there, how much excess air is there, the flame temperature will be lower. So how to calculate that? That also we will see. So this is chapter is more like mathematical chapter, and we have to use a few uh, tables also to get this enthalpy of reactions and calculate the adiabatic flame temperature and calorific value of fuel later on. Okay. Today we will start with very simple things, but later on we will go through some slightly more advanced problems. So again, these things are very well known to all of us, but for the sake of completeness, I will go through it. Okay. So what is a fuel? Any material that can be burnt to release thermal energy can be called as a fuel in our case. Okay. So for our yes, questions? For thermal power plants, the fuels are mainly hydrocarbons. Okay. In general, also we you know that for IC engines and other types of mechanical devices, hydrocarbons are used as fuels. By hydrocarbons, we mean fuels of the form or having a formula which is of this form CNHM or something CXHY. Okay, so some combination of carbon and hydrogen. Okay. For example, methane, propane, ethane, or you go to higher levels like octane. Okay. So examples again very trivial. All of us knows like solid fuels can be coal is a already we know that one of the most popular fuels. Then biomass also is a type of solid fuel. Liquid we know all the petroleum products like petrol, gasoline or diesel. Okay, and gas form will be natural gas. Then what is combustion? Again, we know what is combustion. Combustion is oxidation of fuel. So basically, the fuel reacts with oxygen, which is present in the air, and this is an exothermic reaction. So energy is released. Okay. So fuel plus air leads to some combustion products plus some release of energy. What are the properties for this type of chemical reactions? Properties are that mass of each element is conserved. Obviously, it has to be true. Okay, so whatever is the amount of say oxygen, the amount of oxygen will remain same. Okay, oxygen is not getting converted to another element. So mass of each element needs to be conserved. The total mass is also conserved. We will ignore here that slight amount of change of mass occurs uh, due to conversion to energy. Okay, So we'll assume that energy and mass are separate quantities for this engineering course. In general, you know that mass and energy are related and are not separate, right? So whenever there is some release of energy, it should reduce the mass by a very small amount, but the amount is so small that for our typical normal engineering calculations, we can ignore that unless there is a nuclear reaction. So we'll assume that mass is also conserved, total mass is also conserved, and total number of moles is not conserved. So for example, if the number of moles of reactants is a given value, say 20 or something, the number of moles of the product may be different. Okay. Although the mass of each element will be conserved and total mass will be conserved, the number of moles will be different, can be different because of the chemical reaction. So these are some of the basics. Then another thing that we need to consider is that generally air is used for combustion. So when we consider air for our engineering applications, we will assume that air consists of 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen, okay, as volume fractions or mole fractions. So volume fractions are analogous to mole fraction. Fraction of like the number of moles of that element by the total number of moles. So 1 mole of oxygen is typically taken to be equivalent to 3.76 moles of nitrogen. Okay. So 1 mole of oxygen is typically 3.76. Means when we consider that a reaction is occurring with air and 1 mole of oxygen is required, typically we will consider that 3.76 moles of nitrogen is also present there. Although it is not taking part in the reaction directly, it's also present there as part of the air. Okay. Or in other words, for 1 mole of oxygen, 4.76 moles of air is present. So all this is very trivial. Okay. So then we will define another quantity, air fuel ratio. Again, in IC engines, you must have read about it. Okay. Same thing is required here. There is some sound which is coming. All right. So air fuel ratio is the ratio of mass of air by mass of fuel. Okay. So for 1 unit of fuel, how many, or 1 kg of fuel, how many kgs of air is required or is used. Okay. So it can also be written as, so mass of air is number of moles of air Na into molar mass of air. Okay. Mass of 1 mole of air, which can be calculated based on the molar mass of oxygen and nitrogen. Somebody is creating a lot of noise. Anyway. And mass of fuel is number of moles of fuel into molar mass of fuels. Okay, we will see an example to see how to calculate this. So I hope there is no questions up to this point because it's just trivial. We are just going through very basic material, okay, like a kind of introductory thing. So we want to calculate the air fuel ratio required for complete combustion of propane. And we will see how to do that. So calculate the air fuel ratio required for complete combustion of propane. Complete combustion means that after combustion the fuel will not remain. So any portion of fuel will not remain. Okay. So now complete combustion can occur with two types. One is that with exactly the same amount of air that is required, which we call as stoichiometric amount of air, okay, or theoretical amount of air. And we can also have excess amount of air that will also lead to complete combustion. But if excess air is present, then after the combustion, some excess oxygen will still remain. Okay. If the stoichiometric amount of air is present, then after combustion, there won't be any oxygen remaining. Whatever is the exact amount of oxygen required, that is being supplied. Okay. So when we are asked that calculate the air fuel ratio required for complete combustion of propane, it is assumed that what is the minimum air fuel ratio, means what is the exact amount of air which is required for complete combustion of propane. Okay, because otherwise it is not mentioned, or it is not mentioned that excess air is present. Okay. So we want to find out the stoichiometric amount of air required for complete combustion of propane. So again, we can just write the equation for the reaction. Propane is C3H8. Okay. Then say we need X moles of air for 1 mole of propane. Okay. So X of O2 plus X into 3.76 of N2, because for 1 mole of O2 we have discussed that 3.76 moles of N2 has to be there. Okay. This leads to Y moles of CO2. So after complete combustion, so of hydrocarbons, the products are CO2 and H2O. Okay. If there is incomplete combustion, we will have carbon monoxide also. Means some part will be carbon dioxide, some part will be carbon monoxide, and rest will be H2O. If even less oxygen is present, some carbons will still remain. Okay, in carbon form or soot particles, in the form of soot particles. Because less oxygen is present, we cannot form carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, so soot particles are present. Even the amount of if the amount of air is still less, then some of the fuel itself will remain unburnt. Okay. So for complete combustion, all the carbon gets converted to CO2 and all the hydrogen gets converted to water vapor. The excess nitrogen still remains as nitrogen, because for this reaction it does not directly take part unless the temperature goes to very high values. If the temperature goes to value of beyond 1500 degrees centigrade, then some small amount of nitrogen gets converted to nitrous oxides, okay, which we call as NOx, which is again harmful. But in general, we will ignore that part. Okay, we will just assume that nitrogen remains as an inert gas. So again, very simple, just by comparing the number of moles on each side, we can find out what is the value of X, Y, and Z. Okay. So for example, we have 3 carbon atoms. So Y has to be 3. Okay. By equating the number of or mass balance of each element. So mass balance of carbon gives that Y is equal to 3. Similarly for hydrogen, so 8 atoms of hydrogen. So here also we should have 8 atoms. So Z into 2 should be 8, or Z equal to 4. And oxygen balance will give us 2x equal to 2y plus Z, okay, or x equal to 5. Directly also we can find, but this is the way if we have a complicated reaction. As we will see later on, for coals we will have complicated reactions. So basically the equation is C3H8 plus 5O2 plus 5 into 3.6 N2 equal to 3 CO2 plus 4 H2 plus 5 into 3.76 N2. Okay, this is the reaction for complete combustion of propane. So we need to find the air fuel ratio, which we have defined already as mass of air by mass of fuel. Mass of air is nothing but number of moles of air into molar mass of air. Okay, and mass of fuel is number of moles of fuel by molar mass of fuels. So based on this reaction, the number of moles of fuel in this reaction is 1. Okay, 1 unit of fuel is there. And molar mass of fuel is, we have 3 carbon atoms, so 12 into 3, 36, plus 8 hydrogen atoms, so 8 into 1, 8, so 36 plus 8, 44. So molecular weight of this is 44, so we'll assume that that is also equal to the molar mass. So molar mass is 44 for the fuel, and for the air we have 5 units of oxygen. So number of moles of oxygen in the air is 5 into molar mass of oxygen is 32, and number of moles of nitrogen is 5 into 3.76, and the molar mass of nitrogen is 28. Okay, so 5 into 3.76 into 28. So ultimately, when you solve this, you will get a air fuel ratio of 15.6. Okay. Typically for hydrocarbons, the air fuel ratio is somewhere between 10 and 20. You will see that for all hydrocarbons, it is somewhere between 10 and 20. At least the stoichiometric air-fuel ratio. Later on, we will see that, not in this course, but if you take the gas turbine course, you will see that for jet propulsion, we have very high air-fuel ratio, like 50:1. But those are because we operate very far away from stoichiometric ratio. If we are near to a stoichiometric ratio, it will be somewhere between 10 and 20, okay? Somewhere around 15, 16 like this. So again, this was a very simple problem. Any questions on this? So one more definition, which is the, so as I have said, stoichiometric or theoretical amount of air. It is the exact amount of air needed for complete combustion. Okay, it is known as stoichiometric amount of air or theoretical amount of air. Both are same. And there is another term called percentage of excess air. Percentage of excess air is nothing but the actual amount of air which is used in a reaction minus the theoretical amount of air. Okay, so actual air minus theoretical air is the excess air. So if you divide this by the theoretical amount of air, you get the fraction of excess air. Multiplying it by 100, you get the percentage of excess air. Okay, so if you have a stoichiometric reaction, the percentage of excess air is 0. But we can have slightly higher amount of air, so that localized pockets. So what will happen is that if you exactly have a stoichiometric amount of air, the mixing may not be 100% uniform. Okay, so the coal or the fuel is getting mixed. Even in IC engines also, the fuel is getting mixed with air. Okay, so if the mixing is not 100% uniform, there will be localized regions where there will be air which is less than stoichiometric value, means more fuel will be there. Okay, so in those regions there will be incomplete combustion, and incomplete combustion is harmful in two ways. One is that it reduces the energy output, and second is that it creates harmful products, byproducts such as carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is poisonous. Okay, carbon dioxide is not poisonous. Although we say that carbon dioxide is also harmful because it's causing global warming, but it is only harmful in the sense that it is a greenhouse gas, but it is not harmful in the sense that it is poisonous. But carbon monoxide is directly poisonous. So if there are localized pockets of air, pockets of fuel, fuel-rich areas, there is a tendency to form carbon monoxide and also soot particles, carbon particles, small carbon particles, which are also very harmful if they go to air. Okay, so that's why sometimes slightly more amount of air is used. Okay, which we call, so if slightly more amount of air is used, we call it a, or more amount of air is used, we call it a lean mixture. If less amount of air is used and more amount of fuel is used, we call it a rich mixture. Okay. Again, this should have been studied already in IC engines course. Same concept also holds true here. So we will now go to combustion of coal. Why combustion of coal? Because coal is the most widely used fuel for thermal power plants. Although nowadays lot of thermal power plants are using natural gases, okay, but still coal is very widely used because it is very widely available and very less expensive, okay, as compared to other types of fuel. Any questions till this point? You can still hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. These things are quite simple, so I hope it is very clear. So coal is the most widely used fuel for thermal power plants, and there are different types of coals. Okay, and it cannot be. These are not say discrete type of coals, say containing exactly certain amount of carbon, exactly certain amount of oxygen or nitrogen. So the coal quality may vary depending on the location, and you cannot exactly tell that this is going to be the exact amount of carbon which is present in a coal, or this is going to be the exact quality of the coal. It will vary from location to location, even in the same location from where the coal is extracted. It can vary from region to region. Okay, Means say the first batch of coal may have slightly different type of composition, the other batch of coal may have a slightly different type of composition. This is because of the way coal is generated, because these are processed over a long time from biological materials under high pressure, which has been like lying inside, say inside or below the top surface of the earth. So basically, depending on what's the initial biomass, the composition of coal can change. And depending on the composition of coal, the combustion process and the heating value will also change. Heating value means the energy which is released. Okay. So it is important to know what is the composition of a coal. And there are two types of analysis. We will not go into the details of this. Okay, we are more interested in the mathematical part, which we will do today. We will start the mathematical part, but just for the sake of knowing, we should know what are the two types of methods by which the composition of coal is determined. So one is known as proximate analysis and the second is known as ultimate analysis. Okay. So what is proximate analysis? So this is a simpler type of analysis where you take a part of or a sample of coal and you heat it at different conditions. Okay, first you heat it at a moderate temperature, and when you heat it at a moderate temperature, the moisture which remains in the coal goes out of the coal. Okay, so in any type of coal there is some water which is present. Okay, so moisture which is present. So if you heat it at a moderate temperature, say 105 degrees centigrade, 110 degrees centigrade, if the water which is present in the coal, it goes out. Okay, so depending on the initial mass of the coal and the mass after heating, you can find out what is the mass of the moisture that has left. Okay, so we can find out the percentage of moisture in the coal. Okay, that is considered as one component. Then if we heat it at a higher temperature for a certain amount of time, again depending on the coal, there are some volatile materials. Okay, some hydrocarbons are present with which will actually go out in a gaseous form. So if you keep on heating it at a high temperature in an inert atmosphere, means there is no oxygen, so that no combustion can happen. The volatile material which is present, which is also hydrocarbon, okay, some sort of hydrocarbons which can take part in combustion. So this volatile material also goes out. So again, if you calculate the initial mass and the final mass, you can find out the volatile material. These are generally low molecular weight hydrocarbons. Then whatever remains is generally is a mixture of carbon, means carbon in pure form, means not in hydrocarbon form. Okay, so it's a mixture of carbon and some other materials, okay, which are non-combustible, which together is known as ash. So now if you heat this remaining mixture at a high temperature in presence of oxygen, whatever is the amount of carbon that is present gets combusted to create CO2. Okay, and actually also leaves. So whatever remains after that are the non-combustible materials which are known as ash. Okay. So now if you calculate the mass of, if you just measure the mass, you will get the mass of ash, and whatever was the change in mass is the amount of fixed carbon that was present. Okay. So using this analysis, we can say that coal is composed of 4 types of materials: fixed carbon, then volatile material, moisture, and ash. Okay. Among this, the fixed carbon and volatile material take part in the combustion and is useful for energy release. Okay, so we need more amount of fixed carbon and volatile material, and if like they are present in higher quantity, the quantity of or the quality of coal is considered to be good. And there are different grades of coal. We will not go into details, like anthracite, okay, lignite, bituminous coals. You can read about them from any source. Okay. Anthracite is considered the best quality of coal, which has very high quantity of fixed carbon. Then bituminous, sub-bituminous coals are there. Okay. So depending on the composition, we can classify them. Then the second type of analysis is actually exact chemical analysis. We'll not go into details on how to do this. Okay, so for each element there is a particular sort of analysis which can be done to find out its composition. So this is known as ultimate analysis, and it determines the composition in terms of the weight percentage of the chemical elements that are present. Okay. So in coal, the chemical elements which are present typically are carbon, so which is mainly carbon. Then some amount of hydrogen is present as part of hydrocarbon. Some amount of oxygen is also present. Okay. Some amount of nitrogen is present. A small amount of sulfur is present. So these are the coal: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur. Apart from this, some water vapor is present, or water is present, moisture is present. If the coal is of very high quality, very less amount of moisture will be there. If the coal is of very low quality, large amount of moisture will be there. Okay. Then non-combustible materials, which are together known as ash. Okay. This can be different types of carbonates, silicates, things like that, which will not take part in the combustion product, in the combustion process. Okay. So these together constitutes the entire amount of coal. Okay. So from ultimate analysis, we will know what is the percentage, weight percentage of carbon, weight percentage of hydrogen, similarly weight percentage of oxygen, nitrogen and sulfur, weight percentage of moisture, and remaining amount will be ash. So these are the two types of analysis which can be done to find out the composition and quality of coal. You can read more about the different types of coal, like what is anthracite, what is bituminous coals, if you want. But our interest in this course is more on the mathematical side. Okay. So we are going to quickly jump into some problems. In the exams also you can expect problems more. Okay. So before going into a problem, let us see what happens when there is complete combustion of a coal, or when there is incomplete combustion of coal. Okay. So if there is incomplete combustion of coal, in combustion of coal, again combustion occurs by reacting the coal with the oxygen that is present in air. Okay, so in air we have oxygen and nitrogen. So ultimately, if there is incomplete combustion, the entire amount of carbon does not get converted to carbon dioxide. Some part of coal remains as carbon monoxide. Okay, we are assuming that very less amount of soot particles are present. Okay, if it is very incomplete combustion, means very less amount of air is present, then lot of carbon will still remain as carbon only. Okay, but if it is means if the incomplete combustion is little bit less than the stoichiometric means the combustion is or the air is little less than the stoichiometric composition, then we will have formation of carbon dioxide. Some part will be carbon monoxide. Then the sulfur reacts with oxygen to form sulfur dioxide. Water vapor is already present as moisture, plus the hydrogen that was there also reacts with oxygen to form water vapor. Nitrogen is still considered to be inert unless the temperature goes to a very high value. Okay, and the ash also remains as a non-combustible product. Okay, if there is complete combustion, instead of carbon monoxide, we have the entire carbon getting converted to carbon dioxide. So we have carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, water vapor, nitrogen, and ash. Okay. For complete combustion with excess air, okay, when there is more amount of oxygen present than required, we have carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, water vapor, plus oxygen is still present because the entire amount of oxygen is not used up during reaction. So some amount of oxygen still remains. Excess nitrogen is also present, but anyway nitrogen was present, so the amount of nitrogen will be more, but nitrogen is anyway present, and then ash is also there as non-combustible product. So if somebody states that in a problem it is stated that we have combustion of certain amount of coal with 20% excess air, So we can easily find out if the composition of coal is given, we can easily find out what should be the stoichiometric amount of coal, air which is required, and then what does it mean to have 20% excess air. Okay, so we can find out what is the air fuel ratio in that case. Any questions till this point? So let us try to go through a problem, okay, to get a better feel of how to calculate these things, because the theory part is very easy. So we'll finish today's class with this problem. So a certain coal sample has the following ultimate analysis. So after ultimate analysis, we know this composition of the coal, and it is given as 84.36% of carbon, weight percentage. Okay, 1.8 ultimate analysis will give you weight percentage. It's given already stated here also in the problem. Even if it is not stated, you have to assume weight percentage, not molar fraction. 1.89% of H2, 4.40% of O2, 0.63% of N2, 0.89% sulfur, and 7.83% of ash. Okay. And the coal is burnt with theoretical air. Theoretical air means stoichiometric amount of air, exact amount of air required for combustion. And it undergoes also complete combustion. Okay. So we are assuming that complete mixing was there and it underwent complete combustion. Disregarding the ash content in the final products, okay, because ash does not take part in the combustion at all. So disregarding the ash content, we need to find out. So find the following. Okay, what is the mole fraction of the products? Okay, so there are different products which are formed. What are the products? We have already seen that the products are, for complete combustion, products should be CO2, SO2, H2, and N2. Okay, if we ignore ash, okay, and because this is complete combustion with stoichiometric amount of air, there should not be any oxygen. So we want to find out the mole fraction of CO2, mole fraction of SO2, mole fraction of H2, and mole fraction of N2 in the final products. Okay, so mole fraction of the products, apparent molar mass of the product gas. So ultimately the gas. So what happens is that after combustion, the entire products leave as a gaseous mass, okay, which is known as flue gases, because it goes through the flue. Flue is the stack or the chimney. Okay, so what is the average molar mass of that? Okay, average molar mass of that we want to find out. Questions? What is the required air fuel ratio? Okay, for this type of coal, what is the amount of air which is required for 1 kg of coal? And assuming that the total pressure is 1 atmosphere, okay, we also want to find out the dew point temperature of the products. So this may seem very unrelated to you. Why dew point temperature? But this is actually important in a thermal power plant. What happens is that these combustion products are living through the chimney or the stack. Okay, and there is water vapor which is contained in the combustion products. Okay, water vapor and carbon dioxide are the main products, right? And nitrogen is always there. So if these combustion products are below the dew point temperature, then the water vapor will condense, and condensation of water vapor will lead to lot of difficulties. Okay, one is that once it condenses, it cannot go out of the chimney. Okay, it will just fall down below. It can also react with the sulfur dioxide to form sulfuric acid. Okay, so it is like the atmosphere is maintained such that the water vapor always goes out in vapor state, not at liquid state. Okay, so the temperature has to be higher than the dew point temperature, which is always most probably the case. Okay, dew point temperatures are low, we will see, but the temperature has to be greater than dew point temperature so that there is no condensation. So if you don't know what is dew point temperature, you will read it in your RSC course. Okay, so dew point temperature is the temperature at which the water vapor that is present in the air condenses. Okay, so this depends on the partial pressure of water vapor in the air. So say we have atmospheric air. The atmospheric pressure is 100 kilopascals, out of which the water vapor has a pressure of say 2 kilopascals. Okay, rest of the partial pressure is because of oxygen and nitrogen. So for 2 kilopascal pressure, we can find out what is the saturation temperature corresponding to 2 kilopascal from our saturation table, the saturation table that we have used previously. Okay, so what is the boiling point corresponding to 2 kilopascal pressure, we can find out. So if it is say 20 degrees centigrade or 18 degrees centigrade, that is the temperature at which the water vapor will condense out of the atmosphere. So if the temperature goes below that temperature of the atmosphere goes below that temperature, the water vapor will condense out as droplets, which we see in the mornings. Sometimes you will see that a lot of water droplets are there accumulated on the surfaces of leaves and other things. Okay, because at night the temperature goes below the dew point temperature and the water vapor condenses out of the atmosphere. Okay. So we are sidetracking a bit, but this is also important, and we also want to find out what is the dew point temperature. Okay. So let us come back to our problem. Again, there are different ways to solve it, but we are going to follow one of the easy methods. So which is, let us assume that there is 1 kg of coal. Okay, you can also calculate in terms of percentages, but it is easy to understand and relate to the problem in a better way if we just assume that there is 1 kg of coal. Okay, unit mass of coal is there. So what I am going to do is, we will keep the values open. Very small form, but still we will keep it open on the other side. Okay. Because we need to know what is the percentage of carbon, hydrogen, things like that. So for 1 kg of coal, the amount of carbon which is present is 843.6 grams, right? 84.36% is coal. So for 1 kg of coal, 0.8436 is the kg of or mass of coal. Okay. So if we divide by the molar mass of carbon is 12 kg per kilomole. Okay, or 12 grams per mole. All of you know what is a mole, right? So 1 mole is 6.023 into 10 to the power 23 atoms. So 12 grams per mole. So for carbon, the molar mass is 12 grams per mole or 12 kg per kilomole. Okay. So if we divide the amount or mass of carbon by the molar mass of carbon, you will get the number of moles of carbon. So for this case, the number of moles of carbon is 0.0703 kilomole. Okay. So in 1 kg of coal, we have 0.0703 kilomoles of carbon. This is denoted by the symbol capital N. Okay, capital NC for carbon. Okay, molar masses are denoted by capital M, and masses are denoted by small m. Okay, and molar masses have unit of gram per mole or kilogram per kilomole. Similarly, for hydrogen, what is the weight of hydrogen? Mass of hydrogen is 0.0189 kg. Okay, 1.89 percentage. So 0.0189 kg divided by molar mass of hydrogen is 2. Okay, 2 kg per kilomole. So we have in 1 kg of coal we have 0.00945 kilomole of hydrogen. Similarly, you can do the other calculations. Oxygen is 0.044 kg. So divided by 32 will give us 0.001375 kilomole of oxygen. Similarly, nitrogen was present as 0.0063 kg. So divided by 28 gives us 0.000225 kilomoles of nitrogen. Sulfur present was 0.0089 kg divided by 32 is also the molecular weight of sulfur. Okay, we are assuming that sulfur is like in a single atomic stage. So 0.0089 by 32, which is 0.000278 kilomole. So this is the amount, or this is the number of kilomoles of each of the combustion products. Ashes does not have any composition. We are disregarding the ash because it is non-combustible. Okay. So disregarding the ash content, the combustion equation can now be written in terms of the this mole fractions. Okay. So I will just keep it open, what we have calculated here. So if you write in terms of moles, we have 70.3 moles of carbon, okay, plus 9.45 moles of hydrogen, plus 1.375 moles of oxygen, plus 0.225 moles of nitrogen, plus 0.278 moles of sulfur. This plus, say, A moles of, we don't know what is the number of moles of air which is required for exact combustion. Say A moles of air is required, okay, for exact combustion. So A into O2 plus 3.76 N2. This leads to X moles of CO2 plus Y moles of H2O plus Z moles of SO2 plus W moles of nitrogen. Okay, and we need to find out the values of X, Y, Z, W and A. Again, just by element balance, very trivial, not difficult to do. So from mass balance, we can compare the amount of carbon which is present. So X is equal to 70.3. Okay, on the right hand side, you have X amount of carbon, on the left hand side, 70.3. So X is equal to 70.3. Similarly, Y into 2 means the amount of hydrogen present is Y into 2. So 2Y is equal to 2 into 9.45, or Y is equal to 9.45. Okay. Similarly, balance of sulfur gives Z is equal to 0.278. Okay. 0.278 is on the left hand side and Z is on the right hand side. So Z is equal to 0.278. So now we can find the value of A. Okay. So by balancing oxygen, on the left hand side you have 1.375 into 2 atoms of oxygen. So 2 into 1.375 plus 2 into A. Okay. This is equal to the value on the right hand side. The right hand side we have 2 into X plus Y plus 2 into Z. Okay. So if you do this element balance, you get 1.3752 into 2 plus 2A is equal to 2X plus Y plus 2Z, or A is equal to 73.928. Okay. So the number of moles of oxygen is 73.928. And finally, by doing the balance of nitrogen, you can find out W to be equal to 0.225. Okay, so 2 into W is 0.225 into 2 plus A into 3.76 into 2, okay, which gives us a value of W equal to 278.194. So now we can write the complete reaction. Complete reaction for this combustion is 70.3 moles of carbon plus 9.45 moles of hydrogen plus 1.375 moles of oxygen plus 0.225 moles of nitrogen plus 0.278 moles of sulfur plus 73.928 moles of air equal to 70.3 moles of carbon dioxide plus 9.45 moles of water vapor plus 0.278 moles of sulfur dioxide plus 278.194 moles of nitrogen. Okay. Before we go into the calculations, we can infer a couple of important things here. One is that the amount of nitrogen which is present in the combustion products is very large. Okay, it is the largest. It has the largest value as compared to all the other products. Okay, so the amount of nitrogen, although it does not take part in the combustion directly, its quantity is very large, and this actually plays a major part in determining the temperature. Although it does not take part in combustion, the presence of nitrogen, you have large amount of nitrogen and you have to heat this nitrogen. So all the combustion products gets heated to a high temperature, say 1000 degree or 1500 degree centigrade, right? So to heat this nitrogen to a high temperature, you need lot of energy, sensible energy. Okay, so more the amount of nitrogen present, less will be the temperature of the combustion products, because the amount of energy released is same, but if there is more amount of nitrogen, you have more amount of material which needs to be heated using that energy that is released. So the final temperature will be less. Okay, so nitrogen actually takes up lot of energy which is present in the combustion products. Okay, because it is, its proportion is so large. Okay, we will see later that how it affects the final temperature or the maximum temperature. If say excess amount of air is present, then the amount of nitrogen will be even larger, and it should lead to lower temperature. We will calculate those things in the next classes. Any questions up to this point?
No, sir.
This problem is not difficult. The subsequent problems will like are more involved and need some more calculations when we go into the calculation of enthalpy of combustion. But this is quite a bit simple. Okay. So now to calculate the mole. So once we have the reaction, it is very easy. Okay. So number of moles of products. Total number of moles of product for 1 kg of coal is 70.3 plus 9.45 plus 0.278 plus 278.194. We have ignored the ash. Okay, ash content. So number of moles of product for 1 kg of coal is, remember we are doing the entire calculation based on 1 kg of coal. We could have done in a different way also. We could have done for 1 mole of coal or something like that, but you don't know what is the like mass of 1 mole of coal directly. Anyway, so for 1 kg of coal, the number of moles of product is 358.22. So we can find the mole fraction. Mole fraction of carbon dioxide is the number of moles of carbon dioxide by the number of moles of products. So 70.3 by 358.22, which is equal to 0.1962. So 19.62 percentage is the number of like fraction of carbon dioxide. Okay, so mole fraction is denoted by Y. Okay, so because it is for CO2, so we are writing Y CO2. So you should use this particular notations. These are standard notations. The number of moles are denoted by capital N. Molar mass is denoted by capital M. Mass is denoted by small m, and mole fraction is denoted by small y. So Y CO2 is equal to N CO2 by N product, which is 0.1962. Similarly, the mole fraction of H2O can be found 9.45 divided by 358.22, which gives us 2.64%. SO2 also we can find. SO2 is very less amount of SO2 is present. Okay. So 0.278 by 358.22, which is 0.000776. Even a less amount of SO2 is still harmful because it leads to sulfurous or sulfuric acid. Okay. So sulfur content should be as less as possible. Then the number of moles of hydrogen is nitrogen is the most dominant component, which is around 77.66%. Okay, after this calculation. So this is the first part of the problem. What did we need to calculate? Mole fraction of the products. So apparent molar mass of the product gases. Okay, the average molar mass of the product gases. Average molecular weight, you can say, of the product gases. So again, we can find it easily. The total mass of the products for 1 kg of coal is 70.3 into 44, which is the molecular weight of carbon dioxide or molar mass of carbon dioxide. Then plus 9.45 into 18. 18 is the molar mass of water vapor. Plus 0.278 into 64. 64 is the molar mass of SO2. Plus 278.194 into 28. 28 is the molar mass of nitrogen. Okay. Divided by 358.22 is the total number of moles of the products. Okay, for 1 kg of coal. So mass of the product gases for 1 kg of coal divided by number of moles of the product gases. So this gives us 30.9 kg per kilomole. It will be obviously quite near to the value of nitrogen because nitrogen is such a dominant component. the molar mass, average mass of the product gases will be somewhere near the nitrogen value. Okay, it is 30.9 kg per kilomole. Yes, any questions? Otherwise, please switch off your mic. Then third question is, what is the air fuel ratio? Again, very simple to calculate. So air fuel ratio by definition is the mass of air by the mass of fuel. Okay, we have already considered that we have 1 kg of fuel. So for 1 kg of fuel, what is the mass of air that is required? Okay, so we have seen that for 1 kg of fuel, we need 73.928 moles of air. Okay, for 1 kg of fuel, we need 73.928 moles of air. Okay, so 73.928, not 73.98 moles of air, 73.98 moles of oxygen. So actually the number of moles, if we consider nitrogen also, so 73.98 moles of oxygen plus 73.98 into 3.76 moles of nitrogen. Okay, so the mass of the air is 73.98 into 32 into 1. This is for the oxygen, and for the nitrogen 73.98 into 28 into 3.76. Okay, so this is the mass of air which is required for 1 kg of coal, and 1 kg of coal is 100 grams of coal. Okay. So ultimately you get a air fuel ratio of, it has 1000 grams of coal, so ultimately you get a air fuel ratio of 10.149 for this coal, and it will depend on different compositions of coal. Finally, the dew point temperature. So dew point temperature is the temperature at which the water vapor starts to condense, okay, as I have already discussed, and it depends on the partial pressure of water vapor. So we want to find out what is the partial pressure of water vapor. Partial pressure depends on the, so if you have not read about it still in your RSC course, partial pressure depends on the mole fraction, okay, and the total pressure. So assuming that so it is already stated that the total pressure is 1 atmosphere, okay, so total pressure of the products is 101.3 kilopascal, which is 1 atmospheric pressure. So this multiplied by the mole fraction of water vapor will give us the partial pressure of water vapor. Mole fraction of water vapor is, so what is the molar mass of, mole fraction of water vapor was 0.0264, okay, 9.45 by 358.22. So 9.45 by 358.22 into 101.3 kPa, this gives us a pressure of 2.672 kilopascal. This is the partial pressure of water vapor in the combustion products. Now you can go to the saturation tables and you can find out the boiling temperature or condensation temperature like with respect to this pressure. Okay, so approximately it is equal to 22.1 degree centigrade from the steam tables, like you do for calculation of Rankine cycle. Similarly, we can just go and find out what is the temperature corresponding to 2.7672 kilopascal pressure. Okay, and it is 22.1. So this is the dew point temperature. We'll stop here today. Any questions from this class? About the exam, we will discuss the answers once I have checked the question paper. Check the answer sheets. Then we will check the answers or discuss the answers.